Hey there, Grizz. I sure am gonna miss you, girl. I remember the day you got here when I pulled you out of that really awesome cardboard tube and wiped the oil off your sleeves. And I remember our first bench press, our first deadlift, our first squat. I remember how much better you were than the bar you replaced. We've had some good times, haven't we? I'm really sorry to see you go, but I think our time together is over. I can't wait to get you to a new home so somebody else can enjoy you. I sure am gonna miss you, Grizz. I sure am gonna miss you. Welcome back to the GymCrafter YouTube channel, everybody. My name is Tim. I am the head gym nerd here at GymCrafter.com, the website that I built to help ordinary folks like you and I build home and garage gyms that we absolutely love. And today is honestly kind of a sad day in the GymCrafter gym. As you saw in the intro, one of my beloved barbells is going to be leaving the nest and going out on its own in the world. And it's kind of a special barbell to me. I wasn't always a barbell addict. If you followed the channel at all, you know that I have a little bit of a problem buying too many bars. And that all started with this particular bar right here. This is the American Barbell Grizzly bar. I bought this 8 to 10 years ago, and this was the first genuinely nice thing that I ever bought for my gym. I've been working out at home for almost 40 years since I got my first Sears weight set when I was a kid, when I was 13. But I never really invested in really good stuff. I just kind of bought what I could afford or what would get by or what I could find used or stuff at garage sales, stuff like that. And it wasn't until probably about 10 years ago when I had some health issues and I really needed to double down on the home gym thing that I started to look at spending more than just the minimum amount on things. And this was the first thing where I had the money, I'd been looking at it for a while, and if you watched any barbell reviews 8 to 10 years ago, most of them were like Rogue. Rep wasn't really making bars back then, at least any that were very good. So it was Rogue and then some higher end stuff. And it was interesting because every time I saw a barbell review, whether it was on Garage Gym Reviews or whether it was on the Basement Brandon channel, wherever it happened to be, they would always hold up American Barbell as the standard to which they measured the other bars against. They always talked about American Barbell having the highest tolerances in the industry.
You guys got no tolerance.
I know a lot of Division I gyms use all American Barbell stuff. They're huge in the commercial space. So when it came time for me to look at a nice high-end bar, I settled on American Barbell for a lot of different reasons, and we'll go over a lot of those reasons when we review this bar today so I can show you what makes this bar special over others. Now, since then, I've added a bunch of other American Barbell bars to my collection, and I kind of have some duplicates. I bought the bigger brother of this guy right here that I use all the time, and I just don't use this one anymore, so there's no reason to leave it sitting up on the wall. Not to mention, if I sell this one, it makes space for a new barbell.
What's your problem, dude? You've got major issues.
I told myself when I built my barbell wall that I would only have as many bars in the gym as can fit on that wall, and I've already broken that rule several times over. Behind the camera, I've got 4 barbells that don't fit on the wall, so I've got to fix that problem. So let's take a look at the Grizzly bar. I've had it, like I said, for 8 to 10 years. I realize that I've never done a review on it. You don't see a ton of reviews on American Barbell bars, so I want to give you guys an idea of not only why I bought this bar, why maybe some of you might want to buy a bar like this, but also a lot of people look at me and go, why would you spend this much on a barbell? You can get, bars on Amazon for $99. I've reviewed bars for $149, which I really like a lot, which I recommend all the time. The Rep Fitness bars, I've got 2 right here that are $249 each, which are fantastic bars. So why would you spend, and right now this Grizzly bar is listed on the American Barbell website for $500, and then my American Barbell Chewy bar, which is right over there, is sitting at I think $700 or $800. And why would you spend that much on a bar?
You, sir, are an idiot.
As I go over this bar and kind of review it for you and let you know how it's lasted over the last 8 to 10 years, I want to take a few minutes and explain why you would buy something this nice, and like I said, who's the right customer. So let's start with the bar itself, the actual shaft. When you're looking at barbells, usually you'll see that it's a steel shaft. Almost all the time, that's what it's going to be. When you look at the American Barbell website, they'll actually call this a precision ground steel alloy shaft. And what that tells you in fancy terms is not all steel is the same. Steel isn't just iron ore that you melt down and extrude into a bar. There's other things that go into the steel, and there's high quality steel and there's low quality steel. And what happens is the higher the quality steel you buy for your bars, the more expensive they're gonna be. But that higher quality steel comes with some properties that are important when you're making barbells to last a lifetime. And when I bought this bar, I legitimately thought, I don't know what I was thinking, but I legitimately thought that this was going to be my barbell. This is the one bar that I was going to have. This was going to be it. This is going to last me the rest of my life. I was going to give this to my kids.
Wrong, wrong, wrong.
And I could certainly do that if I had had kids. But it starts with the steel and the shaft. So when you're looking at this steel, now this particular bar, if you look at the specs, there's nothing special if you just look at the specs. And I talk to you guys all the time about not shopping by specs alone. This is a great example. This is a 29 millimeter shaft bar. It is 190,000 tensile strength. It's a hard chrome coating. It's a bushing system on the end. If you look at those specs, nothing special, right? There's lots of bars with those exact same specs that are much less expensive. And in fact, there's bars with better than those specs, right? So let's talk about tensile strength. This is 190,000 K tensile strength. And one of the advertising kind of gimmicks that a lot of bar manufacturers will do is they'll buy bars or they'll buy steel that has a higher tensile strength. And you look at, like Kabuki was known for having the stiffest bars in the industry at like 220 K or 240 K, something like that. And the issue with that is, and this isn't a knock against Kabuki, just in general about the higher tensile strength, is higher tensile strength, what that means is, yes, the bar is stiffer, and you want a power bar like this to be stiff. You don't want this type of bar to bend and flex a lot, but you need it to bend and flex some. And the higher the tensile strength, the less that happens. So if you lift heavy, what happens is every time you lift with your bar bends a little bit. Even if you lift heavy for me, which isn't heavy for most of you, as I've heard in the comments. But what happens is the steel will start to develop what are called microfractures, and it'll get brittle. So as it bends and flexes, it'll start to have these little tiny cracks in it if it's too stiff. It's called being brittle. And so that higher tensile strength isn't necessarily what you want for the highest quality bars. And when you look at the highest quality bars in the world, they're never those super high tensile strengths. They are the right tensile strength for the purpose of that bar. Now, another thing about the tensile strength of the bar and the stiffness of the bar is that when you manufacture bars out of that type of steel, not only does it take a long time to find a supplier that can supply you with a good grade of steel that will pass quality assurance inspection on every single bar, and that's another difference with American Barbell, is every single bar goes through a quality assurance process, whereas a lot of other imported bar manufacturers, they just get their load in and whatever they got is what they got. They really can't do much about it. But you take this and then you add a coating over it. Now this is a hard chrome coating, and you see all kinds of fancy coatings out nowadays. There's just all different colors and Cerakote and things like that. And while some of those are good, some of those actually can add to the brittleness of the bar, especially if they're applied the wrong way. Without getting into a whole in-depth episode about barbell coatings, some things done the wrong way will actually take a bar that was generally good steel to start off with, and it will ruin the steel underneath just to make it a pretty color. So American Barbell for years has only been making a few finishes in their bars. Their most common finish is this hard chrome finish, and they actually developed a proprietary way to do hard chrome that's unique to them. I don't know of many other manufacturers who do it this way, but it doesn't impact the quality of the steel underneath. It's a very long-lasting and durable coating. It's resistant to wear by quite a bit. I have beat the snot out of this bar, and the sleeves, which are also hard chrome, are still in great shape. And the only issue I've ever had with this, with the durability of this hard chrome, is several years ago, I put this up on the wall without cleaning it, left some chalk on it and things like that. And then I realized I started doing GymCrafter, and I didn't use it for probably 2 years. And when I took it down, there was a little bit of corrosion on it that had happened. Now, all I had to do was this stuff right here. I'll tell you, if you buy a nice barbell, you need this stuff. This is a Barbell Rescue oil and a Barbell Rescue brush. And letting it sit in the oil, I let it sit overnight, took the brush to it, everything came right off. So it cleans up really nicely. The bar looked brand new again. That's the only issue I've had with the durability of this. So you'll hear a lot about stainless steel is the most corrosion resistant, followed by Cerakote, which those are the other two primary finishes that American Barbell uses. They were one of the first people to do a Cerakote bar. They've been one of the first people to do a lot of things. But this hard chrome is durable, and the other nice thing is that when we talk about the Knurl, the way that they apply this finish is going to become important. So that's the finish of the bar. This is end-to-end hard chrome. I love it. It looks great. It lasts a long time. Now let's talk about, whoa, this beautiful, beautiful Knurl. Now when I was shopping for bars, one of the things that I noticed was people were complaining that the American Barbell bars were too passive. And if you run your hand over the Knurl like this, you're going to go, Well, that's not grippy at all, right? And I think that most manufacturers nowadays, what they've done is they've gone on to an aggressively knurled bar. Now, American Barbell does make their chewy bar, which I own, which is a much more aggressively knurled bar than this. So if you want a super aggressive bar without it being sharp, you just got to put your hands on a chewy bar. Everybody that I know who has heard about it kind of knows they're a good bar, but then once they put their hands on it, they're like, oh, that's what everybody's talking. It's not, you can't explain it. It's aggressive without being sharp. Most bar manufacturers who don't have the technology to do what American Barbell can do, what they do is they go, well, we want more grip, we want it to be more aggressive, so we'll just make it sharper, right? And we'll just make it pointier and pokier on your hands. That's my technical term for a sharp, aggressive knurl. And bars like the Rogue, the third edition of their aggro bar, I think basically what they do to that bar is they take the steel, they roll it in super glue, and then they go out in the parking lot and they roll it in broken glass, because that's about what it feels like.
Spider-Man's balls, that hurt!
And what American Barbell does is they said, well, let's take a step back. The point of knurling on a bar is grip and safety, right? A lot of people think that grip is so that it doesn't slip out of your hands onto the floor on the deadlift, but it's also so it doesn't slip out of your hands on a high rep movement and smack you in the face, right? So you don't want that. It's a safety thing, it's a feel thing, it's a comfort thing. So they said, okay, do we need to do sharp to be grippy? And the answer is absolutely not. The cool thing about these bars, especially when I have folks in here in the gym and I have them use one of these bars, they're like, this feels a little bit, passive to me. And I'll go, okay, grab the bar and clamp down on it. Now try and spin your hand. And they're like, oh wow, my hand doesn't move. The way that this knurl is it's a high TPI knurl, meaning that the teeth per inch, they're very close together and they're very small. So the best analogy I can give you is if you've got a skateboard for you or your kids, what you put on the top of that skateboard to make your feet stick to that board. And if you watch professional skateboarders, you'll notice that that board just seems like it sticks to their feet. And in large part, that's because of the grip tape. Now that grip tape isn't made of little tiny daggers all over it that are sticking way up to jam themselves into the shoe, which is what most aggressive barbells do. They have these little tiny daggers, they jam themselves into your skin, and if you don't have heavily calloused hands, it's very uncomfortable, very painful. If you've got heavily calloused hands, you take your hand off and you go, looks like your hand's been sleeping on a bed of nails. Well, what this does is much like that grip tape. The reason that that grip tape is much more like sandpaper is it's a high TPI, it's little tiny points that are much closer together, and as your body weight kind of mushes your shoe into that grip tape, it allows the shoe to grip the board, and that's exactly how this knurl works. Under weight, when you're pressing, when you're deadlifting, when you're rowing, this stuff just sticks in your hand. Now, if you're a fan of a much more aggressive and you just like the feel, and maybe you're a competitive deadlifter or you're a competitive power lifter and you're like, look, I do have the calluses, maybe this isn't the right knurl for you, but what I found is for most ordinary folks, which is who this channel is for, right? And that's me for sure, this was the perfect knurl and still is for many, many years. The bar that replaced this is the stainless steel Elite Power Bar that they made, and they discontinued it. I got one of the last ones available. I've been looking at it for years. I'm so happy to have it. It's the reason I'm selling the Grizzly bar, because it has the same exact knurl. It's just stainless steel with hard chrome, and it's really an awesome bar. It's got a little tiny bit more bite than this, and that's what I like about it. I also like that it's stainless steel. I'm a huge stainless steel fan. I love the color, I love the feel. The nice thing about American Barbell, though, is what they'll do that most manufacturers won't. So, for example, if you buy a Rep Fitness Black Diamond Power Bar and you feel it in stainless steel and you feel it in Cerakote, there's a drastic difference in the feel because the knurl that's cut into those bars is the same in both instances. The way that American Barbell does things is they go, okay, this is the feel I want the knurl to have, and this is the coating that we're going to put on top of it, whether it's nothing in stainless steel or whether it's hard chrome or whether it's Cerakote. And they change the way that they install the knurl to offset the thickness of the coating so that they try and get the feel of the bar to be as close to exactly the same as they can, regardless of the finish. Now, what does all that have to do with why this bar is $500? The reason why your Rep Fitnesses and your Rogues, as good a bars as those guys make, don't do it this way is because it is incredibly hard to do well. When you've got the TPI really tiny and close together like that, to mill that into these bars where there's no overlap, every point is exactly the same in exactly the same position, feels exactly the same, there's no inconsistencies across the knurl terminations where the knurl stops and the smooth part of the bar starts is precise and exact. That takes years and years and years of trial and error and experience to learn how to do that. Not only to develop the knurl that actually works as well as it can, but also now that you know which knurl feels the best, how do you put that on a bar, right? And how do you do it consistently bar after bar after bar? And when you look at the process that they've gone through to put this type of a knurl on their bar, that's another reason. You take the quality of the steel, how much research and development they've gone into the hard chrome coating, how much research and development and just craftsmanship goes into the knurl itself, and you start to see why these bars cost a lot more than your average run-of-the-mill bar from your major manufacturers out there. And speaking of that, let's move on to the sleeves. Now the sleeves on this bar are special. When I talked about me buying an American Barbell bar and everybody comparing other bars to American Barbell, they always compared them to the tolerances. The easy way to understand what tolerances mean is if you drop a bar without anything on it, or even with something on it, onto the ground, it will rattle and shake, right? I remember when Rogue first started doing CrossFit stuff, all you heard in CrossFit boxes was every time those bars were dropped, you could hear them rattling the next town over. Now, Rogue's gotten a little bit better recently. They're still not to this level. Rep has actually passed them. Rep's sound when you drop it is really good. It's a nice dead sound. But if you watch the Basement Brandon channel, what he'll do when he shows off his American Barbell bars is he'll drop other bars and they go rattle, 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 and they drops the American Barbell bar and it's like thud. So it's really good. The difference is, Rep Fitness, like I said, has gotten really close. The way that Rep Fitness has addressed that is they've increased their tolerances better, which is how closely the parts fit together. But they've also packed a lot of grease in here. They've also added these little pads underneath the end caps so they don't rattle around. They've kind of cheat coded it a little bit. And hey, that works, and it's a much lower price, right? The way that American Barbell does it is these parts are all precision. There is no space between the parts. They fit exactly as they're supposed to. There's no wiggle room. There's no extra space in between. So there's no room for anything to rattle and shake or anything like that. They just are made to these exacting standards that they've learned over time. I'll give you another example of the construction inside the sleeves you don't find on hardly any other bars. They're bearing bars where they've got needle bearings inside, which is actually one of the first bars they ever made was a needle bearing bar. What that is for Olympic lifting movements. And normally in Olympic lifting bars, what you'll see is that there's the shaft and then you've got the needle bearings and then you've got the sleeve. Well, what American Barbell realizes is that as those bearings spin around the shaft, they start to actually cut the shaft. So instead what they did was they figured out a way to use much bigger bearings, which are much more expensive and harder to source, and they put it over a metal brace or metal race underneath so that the bearings don't spin on the actual shaft. And then in between the shaft and that race and the bearings themselves, there's no space, so no room to wiggle. So just in kind of a medium length explanation there, that's some of the stuff that goes into the construction on the American Barbell bars. And when you add all that stuff together, it leads people to ask a couple of questions. And the first one is, those Rep and Rogue bars are pretty good. Do I really need to spend twice as much? And the owner of American Barbell, Phil Patty, who's a legend in the industry, would tell you absolutely yes. I'm gonna tell you as a realist with a budget and somebody who's not a professional lifter, absolutely not. You do not need to buy one of these bars. Now I'm gonna review in a second here who I think is a good customer for this bar, but in the end, do you have to buy a barbell like this in order to be safe and to lift well? Absolutely not. I love my Rep Fitness barbells. Rogue makes a good line of barbells. Texas Power Bar makes a good line of barbells. Bells of Steel, Fringe Sport. There's lots of good places to get a good bar for just an ordinary person lifting in their gym, and you're never really probably gonna know the difference, and that's not why you spend the extra money on a bar like this. So let's talk about the second question everybody asks is, okay, well, if it's not necessarily for everybody, who is this for? So there's a few different customer bases that I think should look at these types of bars pretty seriously if you're lifting. First of all, let's go over why I bought this type of bar. Number one, I just wanted something nice. I had the money. It wasn't an issue of money. I wasn't living on a budget at the time. I had a very good paying job. I could afford it. No big deal. And I just wanted the best. I think everybody in some area of their life, whatever their hobby is, whether it's a car or whether it's cutlery or whether it's, appliances for your kitchen or whether it's your TV or whether it's your stereo, whatever it happens to be, most of us in our life have something or some category of goods where we just want kind of the best. And I have basically three hobbies in life. I read a lot, I play a lot of disc golf, and I work out, and I do this for a living. And those are my hobbies. Now for disc golf, they're Frisbees. Like an expensive one's 25 bucks, not a big deal. For books, I buy a lot of first edition, limited printing, leather cover, signed by the author type of books. Now does that book have a different story inside? No, but I like having those on my shelf. They serve no other purpose than the fact that I like them. And I kind of applied the same thing when I bought this bar. I just like having nicer barbells. And for me, I can go middle of the road on just about everything else in my gym, which I pretty much do if you watch the channel. But for the barbells, I really enjoy a nice bar. I like the way that it feels in my hand. I like knowing, and it's one of those things where, you know, I can't afford to buy the nicest rack. That's a $12,000 to $15,000 proposition. But I can afford to buy the nicest bar that I can afford. So that for me, I think if that's you, if you're like, hey, you know, this working out thing is really something I really enjoy, and I just want to enjoy it as much as possible and buy equipment that brings me, you know, the Marie Kondo thing, which is if you pick it up and it gives you joy, you keep it. And if you pick it up and it doesn't give you joy, you get rid of it. Well, when I put my hands in an American Barbell bar, they bring me joy. As corny as that sounds, that's why I bought it. So if you're that person, then for sure. The next group of customers that I think this bar is right for, or bars like this are right for, are the people who they just live kind of on a different level than most other people. They earn a lot of money. Their scale of what's expensive and not expensive is completely different than most of the rest of the world, and they just want the best. And I honestly think that these guys make some of, if not the best barbells in the world. I know that there's some competitive lifting barbells out there that people would say, hey, what about the Eleiko, or what about this or that? But in the end, I think, especially for a home gym, I think the best barbells in the world that you can buy are American Barbell bars. So if you're that person and money, you know, doesn't necessarily mean what it means to everybody else, I'm not saying that in a bad way. It's just you're a very fortunate, blessed person and you live a life that allows you to afford those things. I think that it doesn't make any sense to go cheap on a bar, and you should buy something like this. I'll give you a quick story to kind of illustrate that. I sold retail electronics and appliances for 30 years. And when plasma TVs first came out, they were super expensive. So a 60-inch plasma, when they first came out, was $20,000. And I remember I had just started selling TVs at the time. I just started selling plasmas, and I had a guy come in, and we're looking at the plasma TVs, and the 42 inchers were like $7,000 or $8,000. The 50 inchers were like $12,000. And we had looked at a few different TVs. And he went home, and he was looking at Fujitsu at the time, was the highest end manufacturer of plasmas at the time. And so he was looking at a few of the Fujitsu plasmas, and then he left and went home and said, I'll call you and let you know which one I want. So we had looked at like a 50-inch and a 60-inch or whatever. I think the two sizes we ended up looking at. He calls me and goes, hey, Tim, I'll take that TV. When can you have it out? And so I started writing it up, and I told him what the price was, and he goes, I think you got the wrong TV. And I'm like, no, it's the 50-inch. He goes, I want the 50-inch. I want the 60-inch. The $20,000 TV, like without even thinking twice about it, really. He went home, he called me like a half hour after he got home. And I was just blown away that somebody would spend that much on a TV. I'm like, you know, we have like 70 or 80-inch projection TVs in the other room for a quarter of that. So we set it up for delivery, delivered it to his house, and I went out to help him set up, because that's what you do when you sell a $20,000 TV. And I pull up to this palatial estate. Not only did he own this gigantic house, he had bought the two other gigantic houses on either side, and had knocked those down to make room for all of his stuff. And it turns out the guy's name was Adrian Smith. At that particular time, he had an exhibit at the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago called Tall Buildings. He's the architect for some of the tallest, most well-known buildings in the world. And just this world-famous architect, super down, you never would have known by meeting him. Super down to earth, awesome dude, really cool guy. But in fact, when I went in to set up the TV, it was sitting on the floor. He just wanted a nice TV to watch the Cubs games on. So, but in the end, the moral of that story is that there's some people who just live at that level where this is nothing. And I think if you're that person and you're like, hey, you know, what should I buy? You should buy this.
No!
Just do it!
Another group of people that I think should look at bars like this are if you're a competitive lifter and or you lift really heavy. So remember at the beginning when I talked about the microfractures in the steel, the heavier you lift, the more there's an opportunity of that happening. Now, if you think about like a paper clip, you bend it, it's okay, you bend it, it's okay, you bend it, it broke. Well, this is that on a much, you know, bigger scale. And if you lift really heavy, or if you're a competitive lifter, not only do you lift a lot and this bar is bending more than it is for most of us, but it's bending more often because you probably lift a lot more often than most people. So if you're one of those people and you want to buy a bar that is really going to last you a long time, then I think you should look at the American Barbell bars for that reason. And they make the best deadlift bar in the world called the Il Padrino. They make the best aggressively knurled powerlifting bar in the world called the Chewy bar. If you're looking for something a little less aggressively knurled, look at the Grizzly bar. But those are the three that I would look at. But for you, because this is your hobby, this is what you do for competition, you've spent your whole life lifting, so you can lift a ton of weight, so you need a little bit different level of equipment than most people. Those are all great reasons to look at a bar like this. So that is the review of my beloved Grizzly bar, and I'm really gonna miss this thing. I thought about buying one of Darko's. Darko Lifting makes these really cool things called barbell anchors and barbell docks, and docking this on the back here just to have it, because it really was the first nice thing. But I'd really like somebody else to enjoy it. And I think that one of the better ways to get this, if you don't have the budget, but you still have the desire, is I want to have somebody be able to get into this at a much lower price, sell it on the used market, and then it'll find a new home where it actually gets used. It kind of makes me even more sad to see it on the wall and not get used. I'd rather think about this someplace else and it getting used. And I'm a total weirdo when it comes to my barbells. Hey, sue me. But I am going to miss it. Let me know what you guys think. Would you buy a bar of this level, or do you just want to stick at the mid-price point bars? Do any of you have bars by American Barbell? Let me know what you think down in the comments. I'd love to share your experience with other people. Like I said, I don't think American Barbell gets enough love. Just because of the price point, I think a lot of people stay away. And also, American Barbell, if you're watching, you were awesome at making barbells. You have probably the single worst website of any of the manufacturers out there. Literally, there's this bar and there's another power bar on there that's $5 different. When you look at the listings are exactly the same. Like I can't tell one from the other. Like they're missing a lot of specs. It's really weird that a company with that high end of a product would be missing that much stuff from their website. But they are. But let people know down in the comments if you've got one, so they know that this is a good thing to look at. And if you've got any questions for me on the American Barbell stuff, I've got, between this one and those, I've got 4 in here right now. So I can probably answer your question if you have them. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching this long. I really appreciate you guys watching, tuning in these reviews. And until the next podcast or review or whatever you tune in for, I'm Tim with GymCrafter.